We've got over 125 people registered today. So I am looking forward to all your questions. So this is your chance to ask us any questions you have right now. If you are struggling to kick off 2022, then no, you're in the right place, because I'm here. My name is Sara Davison. I'm best known as the divorce coach. And I've also got 3 of my accredited breakup and divorce coach practitioners with me here today. So guys, if you just have a little wave when I introduce you, we've got Suzanne Barber down there, yes, and Sarah Woodward and Jane Wildish. So we're going to be finding out a little bit about their stories as well to help you, because they've been through some tough times themselves, worked through it, come out the other side, and now they're using their skills to help other people. So we're going to talk a little bit about how they've turned their pain into their power later on as well. But also today, I'm here to give you lots of advice for kicking off 2022 to the very, very best start you can possibly have. So yes, do drop a smiley face, a hello in the chat box. And if you have any questions, if you're struggling right now, if you're finding 2022 a little bit overwhelming, I know from my Instagram feed and my DMs that there are so many of you that are a little bit struggling with the whole year ahead syndrome right now. You know, New Year's great and everyone kicks off the new year, but then when we get into it, it's quite a daunting place to start, especially if you're going through a breakup, especially if you're struggling with heartbreak, maybe betrayal, you're coming out of a toxic relationship. How do you get your life back on track? How do you start to take your control back and dial down some of those negative emotions so that you free yourself up to all the opportunities that you can get at the beginning of a new year? So let's just go around and introduce my coaches to you, and do drop your questions in the box. I know lots of people are saying hello and you're looking forward to learning, and it's great to see you all. And some of my other coaches are in there too. I can see Liz and I can see Simon. So do drop your questions in, because we're here for you. This is your chance to get your questions answered. So let's start with Sarah this morning. We're going to come to Sarah and ask her a little bit about how she got into doing what she does. So Sarah, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. I'm Sara Woodward. I went through my own divorce about 15 years ago now, and I really, really struggled with it. I was stuck for a long time. I had a lot of therapy, but it didn't really give me the tools and techniques to be able to help myself to move on. So, I got into divorce coaching because it's exactly what I needed at the time. And I don't want other people to stay stuck and waste years of their life like I did.
Great, absolutely. And you've been now an accredited practitioner for quite a while, Sarah, haven't you? So
just over 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, so you're up and running. So it's great to have you. Looking forward to getting your advice as well as we move forward. And Jane, welcome.
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Jane Wildish. During my own divorce, I realised how much easier paperwork was with an IFA background. Even when I was starting to look through the paperwork, I looked at the Form E and thought, where the hell do I even start with this? And I'm used to difficult paperwork. My own solicitor during my divorce picked up on how I presented and analysed financials, and he actually suggested looking into divorce coaching, something I'd never heard of. Started Googling it and found you, Sara. We had a chat and you struck a chord. I started looking through, joined up and started looking through the training sessions, and I knew that I'd found my calling. I then joined your master practitioner coaching course, which has absolutely transformed my approach to people, life, work, and understanding abuse in much more detail, which has actually taken me down a different route, which is helping people with financial abuse. Unfortunately, every client I have seen has been in or is in a financial abusive situation. They may not be aware of it, and now I've got many more skills that Sara's given me to help them recover and regain their independence. We can talk about some examples in a minute, but
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you've been on a journey there, and having those skills previously to training as a coach, those financial skills, I know it's going to be extremely useful. So if anyone out there listening and watching has got any questions about that, so maybe financial abuse or struggling with the Form E, oh my gosh, I never want to see another Form E as long as I live, mine was bad enough. So if that's you too right now, then do drop your questions in for Jane. If you've got questions for Sarah, drop them in. questions for me and Suzanne. Over to you. Let's find out about you, because you've had a really tough journey yourself. So you inspire me every day. So let's hear you.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, my name's Suzanne Barber, and I help people or coach people who are going through life-changing illnesses and injuries, because that is my experience. About 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, gosh, I've known you that long, Sara. I was in the middle of a separation with my partner, but I was also diagnosed with cancer. So I was actually going through cancer treatment while I was in the middle of going through divorce proceedings as well, which was pretty tough. And as a result, I started looking for help, and really struggled to find it. I was trying to get assistance through the NHS, and unfortunately, even 5 years ago, they were overburdened with their mental health services, so waiting lists were huge. So I ended up reaching out and actually found Sara and started individual coaching with Sara, which was a massive lifesaver for me. And it just made me realise that there was such a gap in services for people going through the same kinds of things that we were going through, which was obviously divorce and physical illness at the same time. So I wanted to be that person to kind of plug that gap to people and be that person who could give instant help or instant access to help, rather than having to sit on endless waiting lists and waiting for help when sometimes some people it comes too late. So, I'm very grateful for the help I got, and I would like to be able to pass that on. I've got 15 or 20 years worth of coaching and mentoring in my background as well before I actually retrained to become a coach. So I put all those skills and experience together to be able to hopefully be of value and help many others in a similar situation.
Oh, and you do it so well, Suzanne, and your story, I know it touched me, and that's part of what we do, right? As a coach, we do hear some really tough situations. And I know from looking at the chat now, I've just dropped in there, if you are having a tough time, do drop an emoji sad face in there so we can see what's going on for you. Because I know right now, especially this time of year, coming out of the festive season, it's such a tough time. If you're dealing with a breakup anyway, then going through it right now, we've got the pandemic, we've got all the things going on right now that are just adding to our stress, our anxiety. It really is quite tough out there for everybody right now. So what I want to do is give you a bit of a boost. That's what we're doing today, is to give you a bit of a boost to get your life back on track and give you that little bit of support and help. So if you do have any specific questions, and that's what we're here for, guys. So do remember, you can pop your specific questions, even if it's just a general thing, just pop it in there. You can put it just to the host so I can see it if you don't want it to go to everyone. But if you do have something you want us to answer, then this is your chance. We're all here for you. So get the most out of everybody here today. We've got some great coaches. They really know what they're talking about. So let's put them to work today. Okay, so we have one coming in already. So now we know what everyone's situation is. Let's have a little think about, this is the kickoff for 2022. I'm a big believer that we have a choice. Okay, your breakup, you may have scars from it. There may be emotional scars that you're carrying around. There may be some trauma associated to it. However, those scars do not have to define you, but it is a choice. Okay, you can do what I did at the beginning and stay in bed, pull the duvet over your head and just eat crisps. Salt and vinegar Walker's crisps was my thing. Don't know what it is for you. What is it for you? You can drop it in the chat. But you can have that choice. That can be your path. Or you can decide that this is not going to define you. You can step up, you can make some changes, and they can be small and simple, and that momentum will get you moving forward. So my top tip to kick this off for 2022 will be to have a bit of a detox. Have a bit of a detox in your home. As you're walking around your home today, what is there in your home that jars a little bit, maybe doesn't make you feel good about yourself? I want you to take 2 or 3 things in your home that you've had maybe for a long time. Maybe they've just always been there. You don't really notice them so much anymore, but they don't make you happy. Or maybe they remind you of something to do with your ex. Maybe it was something that you did together. Maybe it was something that is a constant reminder of somewhere you went or a trip you took. What I want you to do is put that away, whether it's your ex's favorite mug that's still in the cupboard, or maybe they've still got some clothes in your house. This is a time to just box it up. I'm not talking about chopping it up or burning it. I'm talking about boxing it up and then putting it out of sight. Maybe that's even in a garage or upstairs in the loft or in the back of a cupboard that you don't go into very often. Remove it from sight, okay? Because this is, I know it's not springtime yet, but it's a bit of a spring clean, a bit of a detox, getting rid of some of the stuff that's holding you back, and then replacing it with stuff that makes you happy. So maybe it's a picture of you and your kids. Maybe you don't look the best in it. It doesn't matter. Something that makes you smile, remind you of something that makes you happy. Maybe it's a Christmas card you got with a nice message in it this year. Whatever it is, put that up instead. Okay, so out with the old, in with the fun stuff that makes you feel happy. Okay, so that's my top tip to get us started. Sarah, where would you like to start with this? What's your top tip for 2022?
I think for me, and this is where positive psychology is really strong, is to really take some time to sit down and think about what things bring you joy. I think sometimes when we're in a relationship, we end up doing a lot of compromising, and we kind of lose ourselves really and forget what we love doing. So make a list of things that you love doing, and that might entail literally going back to your childhood and what things you did then that that you loved, hobbies you loved, and try and reconnect with some of those things, because we can lose sight of that, especially if we've been in a long-term relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, patterns get set, don't they? And the longer you've been in a relationship, the more entrenched those patterns can be sometimes. I mean, sometimes the heartbreak from a short relationship can be even more intense because it might have fizzled out in a long-term relationship. But you're absolutely spot on, Sarah. Yeah. Okay, Jane, what's your top tip to get going?
I think get organised. I think if you're thinking about divorce or you are going through divorce, start preparing. If you're still living with your partner, don't snoop, but start looking and being aware, particularly for the financial stuff. So everything I do is mainly around the financials at the moment. So I would say just become aware of the posts coming in. For example, if there's posts coming from Standard Life or Aviva or some of the other providers or banks, just start taking pictures of the envelopes. Don't open it, it's not addressed to you, but just start getting organised. Create a folder on your phone, start putting paperwork in there, bank statements, etc. Perhaps start buying more in bulk, for example, washing powders and mascaras, and a little bit of cash back here and there, just so you've got a bit of a backstop. So I'd say get organised.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I know Emma asked a question about where do you start with finances, and that's exactly spot on, Jane, because I think getting your ducks in a row is really important. Now, there are laws that say you can't go into even if you're married, into their personal information. And if you do, then it will be thrown out in court. So you can't go and snoop on their phone, as Jane said, or go into their computers or go through their folders or whatever. However, if you do know that there's certain bank accounts, if you do know that there's certain statements, then collect the bank account numbers or just the envelopes, as Jane's saying, just get a record so that you get as much information as you can whilst that opportunity is there. Because when it's gone, then obviously sometimes we see, quite often actually, we see information getting confusing or disappearing, or there's no mention of certain bank accounts on the Form E where you give full disclosure. So getting your ducks in a line, finding out as much as you can, so to get more clarity. So, if you've got a mortgage, well, how much is that? How much do you pay for the car every month? Working out your monthly budget, those sort of things, just getting a bit more clarity. And you might be saying, so I don't know any of that. Well, it's okay if you don't. But let's just start figuring out and breaking it down. If you could find out something like that, that would be really helpful. Okay, so let's have a look. Suzanne, where would you go for your top tip for the new year?
I think there's a couple actually, but I think one of the ones that really resonated with me was kind of working out like who I am or what I want next. Because you go through kind of a big reevaluation process, don't you? And I did on two fronts, because I'd lost all my self-confidence, both as because of the cancer that I'd had, and also going through the divorce, and that was huge for me. And I'd got really stuck in trying to figure out what was next for me and how to do that. And and actually it was Sara who helped me with that in a big way by looking at who you are inside. What are the things that are important to you as a person, so your values or your map of the world, as we say, and do things that are in line with that. So for me, actually being of service to people and helping people is something that's massively important to me as a person, hence why I ended up doing the things that I'm doing. So really look inside and think, what is really important to you? What are your values? And then that will help you figure out how to then find the activities, whether that's a job or something that you want to get involved with, to help you then move forward and do activities and things that you're going to look forward to and that that are going to bring you joy and excitement.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well, because if you've been in a relationship for a very long time, and I was just reading some of the questions here, and somebody was saying here, Kath was saying that she's been in a relationship for 20 years. You know, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because we lose a sense of our identity when you're in any kind of relationship, right? Because you're compromising. You know, if your partner prefers Chinese and you prefer Indian, you can have more Chinese meals. You know, to make it, you know, you've got to be flexible, haven't you? That's how a healthy relationship works anyway. So, you know, you be flexible. Sometimes those compromises become sacrifices, especially if it's a toxic relationship. And sometimes we don't do the things like hobbies and the things we enjoy because we've got kids and we're doing the school run, and then we need to go and, you know, do certain things, or we've got to go to work. And so all those things that maybe in our 20s we used to do and think, oh, well, this is fun. I can go rollerblading at the weekend, or I can go off with this friend and we can go on a little weekend trip. All that gets lost, doesn't it? And sometimes you have to take a job that maybe you don't particularly like, or you stop working because your role is maybe looking after the kids while your partner's at work, or vice versa. So we all make sacrifices. So we lose a sense of self. So it's really normal to not know who that is when you come out. It's really normal, especially if you're also, like Suzanne did, we go through that life-changing illness as well, where you're reevaluating everything in your life anyway. So rediscovering who you are is important. But Kath is saying, well, how do you do that when you've put everybody else's needs in front of yours for so long? So Sarah, do you have any tips on how you can start to reevaluate and find out who you are after such a long period of time?
I think some of it comes down to starting to listen to your intuition, and actually on small things, just question yourself as to what you really, really want. Things like, you know, do I want coffee or tea? And just get used to, I guess it's like a muscle, just exercising that muscle again, instead of automatically doing everything just to please everyone else. Start challenging yourself, and do it in a step-by-step basis. Don't expect too much too soon, but just start questioning, actually, do I really want that? Or is that just something that I've done for a long time now without even thinking about it? So it's just become a habit. So yes, start small, but start really questioning all the decisions that you're making.
Yeah, it was really good, because actually you said something there, you know, is it something that I want to do, or is it just something I've done out of habit? And how many times do we do that in a day? It's like, oh, well, I always drive this way to this place, or I always do this at 7 o'clock in the morning, or I always, you know, make sure this happens. And why? Why do we do it? I mean, quite a lot of the time we do it because it's just something we've always done. So again, it's about reevaluating. James, in my marriage is 25 years. It's so scary being on my own. Somebody else has popped in here. I was with my partner since I was 17. I'm now 49. I feel I have no identity outside of the relationship. It's like I don't remember or know any other existence. And actually, that's really normal. So please don't worry. It's really normal. And that changes. But those things are important, and just take small steps forward. So like Sarah was saying, think of some things that you would like to do. Now, I always talk about creating your breakup bucket list, right? Of all the things you could do now that you maybe couldn't do or didn't have time to do when you were married. So starting with something like that, and it could be something like painting your nails bright colors, or it could be, you know, climbing Everest, or it could be, you know, just starting collecting something, or taking up a new skill. But whatever it is for you, pop it on the list and then plan it, because we need to get some sparkle back in your life. And that's a very good way of doing it. Jane, do you have any tips for getting your sparkle back and rediscovering yourself?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at your own values. And as you say, we think about other people first. We never put ourselves first. And self-care isn't being selfish. It's just, you know, happy mummy, happy children. So I think if you start looking at your own values and listing what is important to you, and it might be having a 5-minute walk around, you know, when you've done drop off from school, or it might be going and having a coffee, but trying a different coffee shop to where you used to go, and just finding out what is actually important to you and what makes you tick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all these things are really important. And I just want to make sure we're answering the questions as they come in, because there's another question that's come in, and it's a tough one, guys. So I've just found out my ex is seeing someone and it set me back to square one. Please help. Now, betrayal is something that I think it's one of the most difficult things to come to terms with. When you've trusted someone, you've been with somebody, and then they do that, that's tough. And then also when you come out of a relationship and then your partner moves on a little bit faster than you do. And my partner moved on very quick. He was having a baby within months of us splitting up. So I get your pain here, Jane. I know what it feels like. And it is really difficult to manage, isn't it? So what sort of tips, guys, do you have for people that are going through this? How can you move forward? I mean, for me, I think the comparison with the new partner is really tough to handle. So if we can avoid doing that and comparing like for like, and I always like to think, well, they can have my sloppy seconds. I don't want to go back there. If they don't want to be with me, they're not worth it. So sloppy seconds, you're welcome to them. Because remember, your ex isn't going to change who they are. They're not going to change that. They are the same person. And very often, it's true, isn't it, Suzanne, that when we look at someone else's relationship, we see that that's happy and amazing. It's a bit like looking on social media, isn't it? That sort of glossy appearance from the outside. But is that the truth? Is that what's really going on inside?
Well, I think hopefully we all know that Facebook quite often, or any social media, is a tiny snapshot in time and isn't always necessarily a realistic snapshot in time. You know, it's 1 second of happy photograph, where behind closed doors it may not always be the same as that. So take maybe a little bit of comfort in that. But you know, I was in a very similar situation. My partner moved on before I even got the opportunity to be separated, which was really, really hard, and very, very scary. You know, you really don't know where life is going to take you. But I think one of the best things that I did, and one of the things that I was taught and learned as I was going through it, was to really focus on the things that you can control and look at, you know, I'm going to focus on me, I'm going to focus on rebuilding my life, and shutting off almost that piece if you can. And you're one of those fortunate people that can have a clean break. You know, get rid of people off your social media, block their numbers if you can, and just deal with divorces through the professionals. You know, if you can get rid of that and that distraction, then you're not going to get stuck on those hamster wheel questions, as Sara calls them, of, you know, why was I not good enough? Why did this happen? Because oftentimes we're never really going to get the answers to those questions. So I think focusing on the bits that you can control and the bits you can deal with, and trying as hard as you can to put to one side the things that you can't, or let those go, can be a real powerful tool and be able to help you move forward.
Yeah, it's so true. It is really true. And, you know, you can't control what your ex is doing. You can't control what they're saying, what they're doing, who they're with, but we can control how we react. Now, I know that's, you know, and I know Vicky was saying chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. That's her go-to when things get tough. Yes, I know that feeling. But, you know, also, you know, we can dial down those negative emotions. We can do things to help us. And I know that some of you have said they are joining running clubs, and Debbie saying that she joined the meetup groups, which is great because you start to push yourself maybe outside of your comfort zone a little bit to get to those things, to do those things. And you might not feel like doing it, but actually those things will give you a massive boost, don't they? And I know Sara focuses a lot on positive psychology. So Sara, tell us a little bit about what is positive psychology and how can it help people dealing with things like managing people's exes and new girlfriends and new boyfriends? How does that play a part?
Yeah, so positive psychology, it's been around since the early 2000s. And it's about helping people flourish and thrive in their life, which is why it's so great. With divorce coaching, it's and unlike traditional psychology, which is concerned with kind of just the neck up and what's wrong with people, positive psychology focuses on the person as a whole and is quite holistic. So there's 6 pillars that it looks at in terms of your well-being, and you know, all the tools and interventions are backed up by science. There's been a lot of research, so you know that the tools actually do work if you implement them. And one of my favourite ones, and I think is probably one of the most powerful ones, is called 3 Good Things. And it's about, at the end of the day, sitting down and actually reflecting on 3 good things that have happened that day, or 3 good things that you're grateful for. And I know that can be really difficult when you're in the midst of divorce. You think, well, there's nothing good in my life, but there is always something good. You know, you've got your friends, you've got your family, you've got a roof over your head, even just other really small things to be grateful for. And it's really important to connect with the feeling of why you're grateful. So it's not just a tick book exercise. Actually sit with it and understand why you're grateful. And there's a lot of research that shows that it's has a massive effect on your mental health, and it can reduce levels of severe depression to moderate or mild within just 3 weeks. So I just think things like that really help your mental state. And when you're starting to feel better, it kind of has a knock-on effect, and everything else starts to feel better as well. So I think that's one of the tools that I always recommend to my clients. And I know even for me, I still do it to this day. It just makes such a difference to my mental health.
I love that. I think it's really good. I think shifting your focus is one of the things we can control. And it's really easy to focus on, for example, there's a message in here, how do I get past the hurt that he was able to throw our family away so easily? Now, again, if you're focusing on that, and I know that's normal to focus on, by the way, so, I get it and I've been there. But if the time you've spent focusing on that, it's not going to make your situation any better. And actually the trick and the tools here are shifting your focus away from that and putting it on things like, what are you grateful for? Or what's been good about today, as Sarah's saying, or asking yourself a better question like, well, what can I do right now to make this just a little bit better for me? Because the more you focus on that, it's those hamster wheel questions that Suzanne was talking about. You're going round and round and round in circles, asking yourself questions. What's wrong with me? Why did he choose them over me? How could he do this to the kids? What am I going to do next? They're all questions that will keep you stuck because you won't know the answers. There's no sort of hard and fast sort of solution to those questions you're asking. But what you can control is asking yourself more empowering questions like, well, what can I do right now that's going to cheer me up a little bit? Or who can I speak to that can help me move forward a little bit faster on this journey? Or what can I do that's going to make me laugh right now or make me feel just a little bit better? And by shifting that focus, I think it's going to really help you move forward. Now, in some cases, I know people's exes are difficult. When I say difficult, I mean abusive, I mean toxic, I mean unhealthy, I mean, all those things which you're glad to get away from, you're out of. But unfortunately, post-separation abuse is something that is a big challenge for most people. I've heard a lot of people say, and a lot of maybe family lawyers say, well, when you're out of the abusive relationship, things will get better. And they will get better, I guess. But a lot of the time, there still is an element of abuse, and sometimes that can grow because as you pull away from the person that's been very controlling over you, they try to find control in other areas, like, for example, finances, right, Jane? So if someone's going through a breakup with a difficult person, what's your top tips for how can they cope if their partner is being very difficult?
In terms of, do you mean if the person's still trying to the person's now split up and they're still dealing with, I guess one way people still do that is they restrict or they play around with maintenance and financial agreements. So the worst situations really is when you've gone through the CMS and they've been told they've got to pay and then they start and the CMS find that very difficult to deal with because they're making some money. You're used to having some money, so you budget accordingly, and then 1 week it will stop and 1 week it will come back, and you're kind of on that roller coaster of is it coming, is it not? I guess on that situation, you've got to plan your own budget accordingly and think that the money's not going to happen, and manage your money, and that's a bonus if you get it. And you've got to take control of your own money and not rely on an abusive ex or an ex to pay you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, if you can do things like that, starting to take your control back is always going to help you move forward. Now, Robbie is saying, I'm going through a divorce. It feels like the roller coaster of emotions is much calmer now. I'm learning to enjoy my own company again and being comfortable on my own. Now, it is really hard, right, to get comfortable with being on your own, especially if you've been in a busy family environment. And I think one of the things I definitely hear in my coaching clinic is, well, when the kids aren't with me, what do I do? How do I cope on my own? What am I going to do with my time? So, Suzanne, do you have any tips for that, or how people can cope when they're used to a busy household and then suddenly they're there, the door closes, the kids have gone maybe to the ex, and you've got a whole weekend ahead?
I do, because I'm still on my own, actually. I live on my own, have done for the last 4 years now. I had two step kids also, so I was used to a very busy household. And I think, something simple, just as simple as giving yourself something to look forward to. Make plans with a friend. Even if you don't want to go out and you want to stay in, make yourself a nice dinner, have a nice bath. All these self-care tips as well that we've just been talking about. That necessity of self-care is so important. Eating out with a friend or a family member, or just going out for a walk with the dog, snuggling up, box setting Netflix with your favorite chocolate or your bag of salt and vinegar crisps. Anything that is really going to make you smile, help you relax, or just bring you some joy can be really, really helpful. Or trying to find things also that help you stay busy, or even volunteering. If you want to try and fill your time, volunteering is a lovely way to be able to do that with a charity that speaks to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having something to do immediately after that door closes as well, even if it's I've left the washing up so that when the kids go, I've got to go and do something. So you're not going to fall in a heap on the floor, or you've got to go and do the shop. So you're off to your supermarket straight away. But it's literally setting things up to make it as easy as possible for you. Jane, have you got any tips on those as well about how to cope?
I think having a plan at the weekend, particularly when you're on your own, especially in the early days, making sure you've got one thing each day that they're away and something to look forwards to, whether it is just going down the gym with a friend or having a coffee or a walk, finding something for you that you wouldn't usually do if you had particularly got the children around. It's planning again.
Yeah, planning. And also, again, your breakup bucket list can come in there as well. If you've got a weekend, or even if it's a school holiday and it's more than that, what can you do to use that time for you? Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I've got to work. Well, great. Okay, well, you get more quality time to sleep better and less cooking to do, probably. If anything like my son, constantly, it's like a cafe here. So when he's here, he eats and eats. He's 13. It's just a whole new thing now. It's just like, I'm seem to be cooking all the time. But, what is it you can think, okay, well, at least I'm not having to do that. And now I can spend time either relaxing or, like, as Suzanne said, watching your favorite Netflix box set, or, what is it that you can do that feeds you, nurtures you, so that, when they do come back, you're in a better position. You feel more alive, you feel more rested. Maybe you've got those things done, tick them off the list that have been building up and you haven't got around to doing that. So that's important. Okay, so let's see what else we've got. We've got a question coming for you, Jane, here. Let's see. Right, so question for Jane. Can you describe the work you are doing around the financial area? This is particularly relevant, as in my case, for most of our marriage, I was the breadwinner and there was lots of financial abuse, i.e. a large mortgage and trading leading to large losses. My question is, does it influence the financial settlement?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and every judge is different. So if you end up in court, you might see 2 or 3 different people and they will have a completely different view. So I can't really comment on whether it would affect the financial settlement at all. What I would say is I do a complete range of different work from the financials, whether for one lady, I just looked at her pension and helped her analyse that and explain it to her because she didn't have a clue what it meant or what the implications of it were. Another lady or other people I'm working with, I do the complete for me with them from start to finish. They literally dump the bank statements on me and I go through it with them, or do it and discuss it afterwards, then get the partners for me back, analyse and put that back together. So all the jobs that the solicitors don't actually like doing. So it's very varied. It's probably better to chat offline, Pam, rather than actually talk online, particularly if there's information that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different, but it is a good idea if you are in an abusive situation to get help. And there are obviously domestic abuse charities that can help you with that as well. There's lots of support and advice out there, so you're not alone. Okay, so do know that. And Pam says, thanks, perfect, will do. So you can reach out to Jane. Yeah, I mean, there are so many things, guys. And if you have more questions, do pop them in the chat, because we're here for you today. We're here to answer your questions. If there's any more help, or you want us to go a bit deeper into anything, or you've got a specific question for one of our coaches, do drop it in the chat. I can see questions coming in right now, which is great. So, Sarah, if people are sort of sitting there now thinking, okay, so we've got 2022 coming up ahead. I'm kind of thinking, right, I'm going to get myself focused now on thinking a bit more positively. I'm going to use those psychology tips, that positive psychology tips that you've been talking about already. But I'm just a bit scared. I'm just scared that I'm going to do all this and I'm still going to feel rubbish at the end of it. What would your advice be?
I think one of the things to know is and understand that's completely normal is that it is a roller coaster of emotions. And you will have days where you go backwards and you feel like you've taken two steps, one step forward and two step back. And it's just about being kind to yourself and know that that's normal in this process. And I think the more you implement the tools and techniques, you will notice that you start to bounce back quicker after each time that you have a bad day, and that's where the tools really come into their own. But I think it's all about taking small steps. Don't expect too much from yourself as well. Don't set yourself really unrealistic expectations. It's really useful to set yourself goals so that you've got some purpose and something to aim for. And I think make those fun as well. Try and get as much fun back into your life. And as you said earlier, Sara, you need to get your sparkle back. So it's really trying to dig deep and find out what it is that gives you that joy. And one of the pillars in positive psychology, it's actually about finding your meaning and purpose in life again, because again we can lose sight of that as we go through life, especially if we've been in a long-term relationship. So it's really about taking the time to almost get to know yourself again, actually, and think about what you want in your future. And I'm a big believer that although your future might not have been what you wanted and it's different to what you had planned, it can still be amazing, and you can still be happier and stronger than you ever were before. And I know that can be hard to believe when you're in the midst of it, but just from my own situation and that of my clients as well, I know that really is true.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think at the beginning, Jane's asking here, how long will this pain last? And, we've all felt it, and it does feel like a physical pain, doesn't it? And I know, Suzanne, you've been through your own trauma, and a lot of the time that pain sort of subsides, but, it still resides in the body sometimes, doesn't it? And we're still dealing with that trauma moving forward. But that acute pain, we can move through it, can't we? And we can speed up that process. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar to Sara, really. And Jane, that's a question I get asked all the time. How long is the pain going to last? And unfortunately, there is no answer to that. But as Sara has said, making sure that, if you're consistent in putting all the tools and tips that we're talking about here into practice, giving yourself those things to look forward to, and accepting actually that some days are just going to be rubbish and you are going to feel a bit awful that day, or it's going to be really difficult. And that's okay if that happens. Acknowledge it and just say, look, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling fearful or anxious today, and just let it pass. Being also conscious that you don't stay there. So if you want a day with your head under the duvet eating salt and vinegar crisps, that's absolutely fine if that's going to help you feel better that day of hiding. But put a time limit on it. So say, right, okay, I'm going to do this. This is my 24 hours. And then I'm going to get up and I'm going to get back out into the world again. So just making sure that you're listening to your body, listening to what you need to help you move forward, and just acknowledge that some days are going to be harder than others. Exactly like Sara said, just being kind to yourself and giving yourself a break, because we all beat ourselves up quite often about the fact that we're feeling awful. And we shouldn't, because it's a natural, it's perfectly natural to have these negative emotions and acknowledge them in order to be able to move forward, rather than trying to stuff them down, which is, remarkably unhealthy, as many of us probably know.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways you can stuff those emotions down, aren't there, Suzanne? What was it things do you see with your clients?
Just ignoring them completely is a big one. People don't want to talk. It's that very British stiff upper lip often, that attitude of it's fine, we'll just carry on regardless, completely ignore all of that. But actually, the more you ignore it, the bigger it comes back to bite you later on. And that might not be now, that might not be in 6 months, but actually that could even be years down the line. So making sure that you are acknowledging those negative feelings and doing something about them actively real time is very, very powerful in the security of your own self-confidence and your own mental health going forward.
Yeah. And I think that's such good advice. I think we all control the remote control to our brain, and we control how we react. We also control how we feel. So when Jane's asking how long will this pain last, it's a tough one, but it kind of comes down to you. When are you ready to step up? Now, there's no magic one to take it all away instantly, but there's definitely things you can do to start dialing down those intense, painful emotions. So like you said, Jane, you're going to join a running club. That's going to help. In that moment when you're running, you'll get the adrenaline. Don't push yourself too hard when you're in that sort of really painful stage. Sometimes if you push yourself too hard with exercise, it can then trigger more emotions. So just be comfortable. Don't push yourself to your max, but just, release some of that negative energy by doing the exercise. Exercise is always a good thing, as is getting outside in nature. If you're into tree hugging, a bit of tree hugging can help. Some of you are going, sorry, you've lost it now, but it works for me. So, and then there's other things as well, being around people that love you, care for you, make you feel good. Choosing your friends really carefully right now. You might have friends that you've known for a long time, but they just pull you down a little bit. Or maybe there's a part of them that kind of connects on that negative because they've got stuff going on too. For you right now, you need to protect yourself and make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to lift you up, that genuinely have your best intentions at heart, are going to make you feel better about yourself. It doesn't mean to cut off all those other friends. It just means just be consciously aware now. Who are you spending your time with? Are they energy vampires that make you feel a bit worse? Or are they people that give you a bit of a boost? And try and manage your time so you can really enjoy the time with the people that give you that boost right now as well. So these things you can put into place and they will make a difference. Okay. But again, it's a choice and it's not always the easy choice. The easy choice might be to get into bed, pull the duvet over your head and eat the crisps or chocolate. That might be the easy choice, but it's in those moments that really start to define how fast you get through this. Yes, as Suzanne said, it's okay to cry. It's okay to have a duvet day, but a duvet day, not a duvet week, not a duvet month, not this is woe is me. Another really useful tip that I use is not using your ex's name. Because how many times do we tell the same story, right? How many times do we talk about the story, whether it's the hairdresser or you're queuing at the butcher's or, you bump into your neighbor? It's almost like you're living through EastEnders, that sort of toxic scenario where you just give them the latest update on the most tragic thing that's just happened. And that will keep you stuck. You're retelling your same story, you're going to feel those emotions all over again, those negative emotions. So finding things to talk about and connect with the people, which gives you that love and connection with them, but not on the negative, on the, hey, we're moving forward. Guess what? I'm going to get my nails done today. Or guess what? I've joined this club and I'm going to do this. Or, I'm getting my finances sorted with Jane and I'm really excited about getting back on track. Or, anything like that can really give you a bit of a boost. So it is in your control. It's a tough one though, because, sometimes, it is going to be a grieving process. You have to go through that curve of letting out those negative emotions, not stuffing them, not drinking too much, not partying too much, not just dating everyone that shows up in your life right now. It's about focusing on processing what you've been through, learning the lessons. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of the questions here. We've got one come in. How can you manage the ongoing control via children and managing the manipulation of the children? I'm finding that this is my situation. My partner is a narcissist. Okay, so I'll kick off and then maybe we'll come around the group and see what the coaches have to say. We're coaches. We're not ologists, artists, or analysts, so we don't diagnose people. So I don't really like using the word narcissist. However, difficult people are always going to be challenging. And as we've said, we can't control them. We can only control us. But when it comes to the children, as we said earlier, the children and the finances are two of the key ways that as you pull away from a toxic relationship, that's the only control they have left over you. Okay, so you'll find that sometimes they do use the children to get to you because obviously it's a surefire way to hurt you, which if you're divorcing a toxic person, an abusive person, a difficult person, it's not, there's a bit of conflict over who gets the piano and who gets the dog at the weekend. They are hell-bent on annihilation of you. So the more suffering they can cause you is what they're targeted on. So that's why that divorce process, that financial sort of negotiation process is very different because they're not changing their spots. It's still going to be bloody difficult all the way through the divorce. So again, I see this time and time again, and I know my coaches do too. The thing is, first of all, you've got to know that your kids will get through this. And this can be a really good learning lesson for your kids. Okay, I know it's tough, but if they can learn the lesson about, that there are difficult people out there at an early age, then they will be more aware of it and maybe won't make the same mistakes that we all made growing up. You know, maybe if you married somebody that was difficult, they all spot the warning signs. So again, really important we don't badmouth your ex to the kids, because that, again, if you go to court and you badmouth them, that's very difficult. It's also not good for the kids and it's not good for you. So doing the right thing, it's never the easy thing, guys, but doing the right thing is going to be key. Now, who else has some advice they'd like to share on this? Because there's so much we can say, isn't there? If you're coming out of a toxic relationship with kids and they are being manipulated, what would you like to say to them? Jane, would you like to kick that off?
Yeah, I always start with the children. Well, how do you feel if your best friend, I name your best friend, how would you feel if your best friend said that to you? And just sort of get them to play the situation out using the words, I never ever badmouth the father. Ways to take a step back, always, you know, if anything, not praise to gaslight, but praise, you know, oh, have you had a lovely time with daddy? Try and find the positive. When there's new girlfriends and children, find the positive and find the nice things, and make sure the door's open that the children can talk to you and trust you. But I use some of the techniques I've learned from your training course, Sara, with the children. We talk about pulling out the feet, or describe the feeling in their tummy if they're feeling sick, pulling it out, changing it. We live on a hill, so we throw it down the road and then it gets run over by a car and another car brings up a nicer feeling that might be stroking a puppy. That's my little 8-year-old. Doesn't work with my 12-year-old, but there's different things we do to talk about things, just to put it into their lives of who they're mixing with at school. And then they start spotting trends at school, which is a bit, you know, discussing the things with about their friends and what their behaviours are, rather than their parents as well. So I think it's mustn't gaslight them and say, oh no, that didn't happen. Just sort of, how does that make you feel? And teaching them resilience.
Yeah, and I think it comes back. I was on the radio this morning on BBC Radio Berkshire, and we're talking about not bad-mouthing the other partner, but there's a difference between not bad-mouthing and setting the record straight. So if there are lies being told, so manipulation, as this person has mentioned, then I think it's really important to set the record straight so they don't just hear one side of the situation. Now, again, obviously difficult partners can be male and female. So, you know, that's just a fact. Predominantly, it tends to be male, the difficult partner, which is why, you know, I know Jane was saying daddy, but it can be mummy too. But whatever your situation is, it's really important that we are very clear that if there are lies being told, then we set that record straight, but not in a dramatic way, not in a, oh my goodness, I can't believe they said that. That's utter rubbish. No, it's very much like, okay, well, my truth is this. I know I've got a client at the moment who's dealing with the father in this case has been telling the kids that mummy left him. That's not the case. You know, mummy had to move out of the house, but that's not mummy left him. He was already in a relationship with somebody else. So setting the record straight, you've got to obviously make sure it's child appropriate. So again, as Jane was saying, some things work with one of her kids, it doesn't work with the older kid. Again, you know, as much information or as little or as many details or as not is relevant to that child, but just setting the record straight, because I've seen so many clients that come to me and years down the line, the kids only heard the difficult person's parents' side of the story. So that's what they think, well, if the other parent hasn't said anything different, then that must be the truth. So again, it's really important just to make sure you're setting that straight, but not bad-mouthing the other parent. Emma says, is there any advice for teenage adult children, 15, 18, 21? I have my daughter say she thinks it will be better. I haven't badmouthed him. I still love him. It's so hard. I don't think they had seen our difficulties. I kept my head in the sand. So Emma, what specific is your question there? Any advice on what area specifically? It's good that you haven't badmouthed him. The love thing with abusive partners is really normal. You're saying you still love him. Now, you know, we talk about this, don't we, guys, in our training, that when you meet somebody who is abusive, you know, if they ended up on being the same on the first date you go on, if they acted the same as they did the last time you spent the day with them, you wouldn't have got in or stayed in that relationship, right? But what happens is we fall in love with the person that they appear to be at the beginning, and you get hooked into that. And that's where you stay, like, oh, I really love this person and they're all amazing. Quite often they're doing what we call love bombing. So they're showing the very best side of themselves. So we fall in love with that. But then the bad behavior starts to happen in toxic relationships. And you go sort of, some days are okay, some days are horrific. You're like, oh my goodness. But then you get a glimmer of the person that you fell in love with. And that's how they keep you hooked into these toxic relationships. So that's why we stay, right? That's why we stay. But we're in love with this person here, which in a lot of cases never really existed. It was a perception. It was a persona. It was to get you into the relationship. It was the mask they were hiding behind. So quite often we think we're in love with this person. But if you think about it, are you in love with the behaviors and the person that's showing up right now? Or are you in love with that person you thought they were? That's a tough realization. It's a tough realization when you realize that you're in love with someone that never really even existed or only existed for moments. You know, some people, they were like that and things changed. You know, there's lots of addictions, lots of things that can change a person. But predominantly, that was never really who they truly were. But that's who you fell in love with and that's who you're hooked into. So Emma's saying, that is the worst part. Like I find now it was in my head. Yeah. And that, I mean, I've been there. I know some of my coaches here have been there too. And that takes a bit of time, but it helps you unhook because you're like, okay, that wasn't really reality. That person never really existed, but I know what I want from a partner now. I want that. I want all those qualities I thought they were. The reality is they weren't, but now I've learned that lesson. I can bank that and start looking for somebody new. So guys, who'd like to take a question on dating? How do you start getting back out there? How do you start putting yourself back out there after you've had those trust issues, after maybe someone's let you down? What do you think is the best way to help people slowly go about getting back into that? Suzanne, go over to you.
Speaking from current experience, it is tough and it is scary getting back out there in dating world. But I think, like Sara said, taking those learned lessons from that previous relationship, particularly if it was abusive, but there was qualities about them that you really loved and really liked. Remember what those qualities are to take those forward into what you're looking for in a relationship now. And doing what Sara calls in her training and what we use, the ideal partner exercise, is a fantastic way to figure out what it is that you want. So listing down 5 or 10 things that you want to have in a partner, and then a couple of the deal breakers, perhaps behaviours that you will absolutely not accept, and stick to that. Because if you start letting those, oh, well, he's really nice and he's very pretty, or, she's a gorgeous woman and she has all of this, but actually for me, smoking's a no-no, but she smokes, and you're prepared to kind of let that creep in, then you're starting to let those boundaries wane again. So be really careful that you keep your boundaries, and out of those qualities that you want to have, you look for those qualities, and not settle for the bad behaviors that maybe tipped the relationship in previous times.
Yeah, really good advice. And boundaries is key, aren't they, Sara? I know in your work you work with boundaries too, don't you?
Yeah, and I think especially if you've been in a difficult or abusive relationship, all your boundaries have been shot down really over time, and often it's happened so gradually over time you don't even realize that it's happened. So again, it comes back to kind of understanding yourself and what you as Suzanne said, what you will accept as good behavior in a relationship going forward, and not compromising on those either. And I think just adding to the dating thing, I think my advice would be to start slowly, to see it as a bit of fun, really, kind of just dip your toe in to start with. And as you always say, Sara, just think that you're not necessarily looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right at the moment, but Mr. or Mrs. right now could just be the fun that you need to have. So, don't take it too seriously, try not to take it too personally, and just look at it as some fun to start with.
Yeah, I think that's so right. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, don't we, to go out and immediately meet the right person for the rest of our lives because we don't want to be alone. But actually, when you start working on yourself and you go on that journey of discovering who you are and what you enjoy, people come into your life for different reasons. They say, don't they, a reason, season, or a lifetime. And sometimes the people you think are in for a lifetime turn out that it's just a season or maybe a real reason, but you need to bank that lesson so that you don't keep repeating the same mistakes. Now, I want to just answer one more question here. We've got a question from Kath here. My children don't know about the affair. Would it help them to understand if they did? He doesn't think the kids need to know, 14 and 11. But that is just because he doesn't want to look bad. is it worth risking their relationship with him by telling him they have met her with him, but he said it was a new relationship? No, my personal advice is no. That would be something for you rather than for the kids. You've got to think about what's best for the kids. Right now, they don't need to know that. Right now, any information, details like that, 14 and 11, they're going to figure it out pretty soon. They're going to be asking questions pretty soon. That is something that will come out as they get older. I'm absolutely sure they're going to ask a question. And, I'm all for not lying to kids, but again, it's about protecting them. What's it going to do for them if they know that daddy did that? How's it going to impact their relationship? It could be something that is quite damaging for them at such a young age. So I would just protect them, and you have to find a way to deal with that for you. So that's why getting help for you might be a good idea. So you can process it, you can come to terms with it, rather than putting that onto your kids to also have to deal with right now. When they're older and they've got more experience of relationships, and that, things happen, and that, there is blame sometimes, and, responsibility for your actions, all those things, then they'll be more emotionally stable to work with it. What I would be doing is giving your kids methods, strategies, coping strategies to cheer themselves up, to manage their emotions, to let them know they can dial down some of the negative emotions if they get a little bit sad or they're worried or anxious. Give them those tools. That's what we should be sharing with kids. That's what we should be teaching them at school. 5-star jumps, putting a smile on your face. Body language will change how you feel in a heartbeat. So sharing these kind of tools and tips that you can learn, from, there's lots of free stuff out there. My podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness, you can book a free call with the coaches and get some advice from them too. So, all these things are there for you to learn these tools. But, as a parent, unfortunately, sometimes we have to suck up that tough stuff and just let the kids enjoy the relationship between both parents, however hard that can be for us. So yeah, that can be a bit tricky. So we've got 1 minute left. Just a quick thing from each of the coaches, just if you want to finalize, and your last thing you'd like to say. We'll start with Sara. What would you like to say to everyone listening today, Sara?
I think, and I know it can be really difficult at this point in time, but just to have faith that things will get better. And there is so much that you can do to help yourself and take control of the situation so that you feel more empowered. So don't lose hope.
Yeah, that's really good. Jane?
Yeah, I was going to say, believe it will get better. Walk and think about you, but think about you isn't being selfish. A bit of self, it's your life too.
Yeah, self-care is not selfish. I like that. That's brilliant. And Suzanne?
Yeah, just to echo the sentiments of Sara and Jane, it does get better, and just keep the faith that it will get better. It's a journey. There's the J word again, but it is a journey. It is a pathway, and you're on a pathway to rediscovering yourself, to a life that you now have the power to design yourself. So remind yourself of that on the difficult days, and just keep going, just taking steps forward, and just keep going. And just remember, you've got this. You can do it.
Oh, I like that. You do have this, guys. You are not alone. As you can see from the chat, the questions, all our own personal experiences, we've all been through it, and you can get through it, come out the other side. It's your choice. It can be a little bit tough, but choosing to step up and just having the faith, even if you're not sure exactly of the how, to know that you will get through this, you will go on to be happier. And sometimes going through tough times, we look back and go, actually, that was really painful, but now I've been through that, I can get through anything. Okay, so turning that pain into power is going to be important on your journey too. But no, you're not alone. Do follow me on Instagram, Sara Davison, Divorce Coach. I share lots of things like this. I'll be sharing the recording of this too. If you're registered, you will get a copy of it. And know that, these things do get better. You will get through it. And as Suzanne said, you can do this. Thanks to all my coaches for being there. Thanks for your comments and questions. I really hope that's helped you guys. Sending you lots of love. Let's make this a fantastic 2022. Thanks, guys.